We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
Ed. This is Ping Pong Theater Ed, because his theater is made completely out of ping pong. So
That's what we're going with now.
All of his furniture is made out of ping pongs. Can you imagine? That would be
Lightweight.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it would be hard to sit on more than once. Ed feels that he is first and foremost an audio guy, but he's greatly enjoying his Vizio P-Series TV, and with its built-in apps, he has been able to enjoy some Dolby Vision HDR10 content from streaming services. After seeing those images, he doesn't feel any desire to upgrade to Ultra HD Blu-ray, but is he missing something? He's sure Ultra HD Blu-ray discs are still technically superior, but how far behind are the streaming versions really? Well, okay. When you stream 1080p and you're watching it on your TV, and then you watch a Blu-ray, I mean, there's a difference, right? I mean, there's a difference.
Although
there's
I gotta say,
artifacts that you see.
You know, 1080p Netflix looks pretty darn good to my eyes. Like,
does look pretty good most of the time. I would agree with you there. Occasionally I see some compression artifacts that I think, you know, especially like in the blacks, like, you know, you see some stair stepping here and there. I don't know if that's the projector I'm using sometimes, or the streaming service is often hard to nail that down. But I don't see those things when I'm watching a Blu-ray disc and getting 1080p. Therefore, I can only imagine that the 4K that you're getting, or the Ultra, we're talking about 4K here, or are we talking about the HDR?
I mean, interestingly, like, say if you're watching Netflix and it has either an HDR10 or a Dolby Vision version, when you start watching that version, it will actually, like, let's say your bandwidth starts to, you know, get constricted for a little while. Your internet connection starts to slow down, they will actually lower the resolution before they deactivate HDR, which is nice. I prefer that they do that. I wouldn't want my dark and light spectrum to change visibly before the resolution is simply lowered. So I'm glad that they make that choice. I used to be able to notice
that all the time. When they went between, like, standard definition and high definition, I used to see the difference. I used to see the color flip all the time. I gotta imagine that HDR, since it's metadata, it just kind of feels like that should be able to go across pretty easily on a stream, but that still doesn't. You know, but that's not the totality of the picture.
From a technical point of view, like Netflix suggests that you have a 25 megabit per second connection. Most people who have tested the bitstream say it's like 17, 18, 19 megabits per second for the 4K HDR version. Ultra HD Blu-rays are hovering between 66 and 100 megabits per second. And they're actually using the same compression. They're both using H.265 or HEVC, which is the high efficiency video codec. You know, so both the streaming version and the Ultra HD physical disc version are using the same form of compression, but one of them is clearly more highly compressed. How much you'll see that, though, like we say, it's, you know, it could be pretty hit and miss. But he asked, is he missing something? And yes, he is. He's missing lossless audio. Because none of the streaming services, even Vudu, which does offer Atmos, they offer Dolby Digital Plus Atmos. They offer the lossy version of Atmos, whereas on Ultra HD Blu-ray, you get lossless Dolby True HD or Dolby True HD with Atmos on top of it, so the full lossless version. So yeah, since he said he is an audio guy first and foremost, maybe that would sway him to the physical disc even more than the video. Because that's the thing.
That always sways me towards the physical disc. The difference in sound quality between Netflix and Blu-ray is, I mean, it's kind of undeniable.
Yeah.
When you really get down to it. So that would sway me. He asks, when you see Dolby Vision or HDR10 via streaming app, is that different from what you would see in the Ultra HD Blu-ray? Is Dolby Vision streaming its own format? Is HDR10 streaming its own format? Well, it's doing the compression. As Rob just said, it's the same compression codec. So it is the same stuff. It's supposed to be the same stuff, but it is more compressed.
That's right.
It has to be. to get to you.
If you want to put it in audio terms, it's like you can have a 128 kilobit MP3, or you could have a 320 kilobit MP3. They're both MP3, right?
Yeah.
But one of them is more highly compressed than the other. That's what's
Both of them will sound like music.
Both of them will sound like music, and they're both the same format, and the same player will play them. But that's what's going on here. The streaming version is just a more highly compressed version, but it's the same format type. And Dolby Vision is not its own separate, completely separate format thing. And neither is HDR10. Those are ways of expressing dark versus light. That's what those are.
Right.
And there will be within some type of encoding format like H.265, or if you're watching YouTube, that'll be VP9, which is Google's own compression format for 4K and HDR sources. So yeah, what you're seeing on the streaming, it's the same file format, it's just more highly compressed.
Right. So yes, what about the streaming movies and TV shows that are just labeled 4K or UHD? How do those differ from what you get with the Ultra HD Blu-ray version? Again, it's the compression. All this comes back to compression.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, you can only get so much data down the pipe. And being able to get more data down the pipe is the goal. It has always been the goal. That's why people want fiber. That's why people, moved away from certain services. Dial-up, for example. It just wasn't. It didn't have as much data. It didn't have as much ability to send stuff across. So when you're seeing something that says 4K or UHD, they are sending you a 4K picture. It's just got less data in it. They have to compress some of it out, or figure out a way to make it small enough to get through the pipe. With your disc, you're getting all of those. You're getting everything. You're getting the high-end audio. You're getting the HDR stuff, and you're getting a bit-for-bit 4K picture.
Yeah, and so far, all of the Ultra HD Blu-rays that have been released have included HDR. So when you're saying some of these streaming shows, they say 4K or they say UHD, but they don't say plus HDR or plus Dolby Vision. That means that they are 4K resolution. They have 3840 dots going across and 2160 dots going down, but they don't have high dynamic range. They're still using the range from 0 to 100 nits. They're using standard dynamic range. So if it just says 4K or it just says UHD, it's the standard dynamic range from 0 to 100 nits. If it has HDR10 and or Dolby Vision, now that expands to go from 0 to 1,000 or 0 to 4,000 nits, which means, brighter specular highlights and more detail in the shadows if your room is dark enough to see it. And if you don't know what that's referencing, listen to last week's podcast, because we explained why HDR can often look darker than SDR, which seems very counterintuitive, but we talked about all of that last week.
Yeah, so what about Blu-rays versus Ultra HD Blu-ray? What's the real differences? And could a Blu-ray played on a 4K upscaling player look just as good as an Ultra HD Blu-ray? This goes back to DVDs versus Blu-rays. It's the same. Think of it as the same sort of thing, right? So whether you get difference, well, right now you get resolution. And the HDR stuff is only on Ultra HD Blu-rays right now. Right? Is that right?
And a few streaming things.
Yes, for this.
Some of the streaming content.
So what are the real differences? The real differences is the resolution is higher.
Yep.
And you get the Atmos stuff, right?
No, because you could get Atmos on Blu-ray. Yeah. The major differences are that the resolution is the most obvious one. Blu-rays are 1080p, Ultra HD Blu-rays are 2160p. But that's probably the least visible thing out of all of it. You're getting expanded color on Ultra HD Blu-ray. Right. Ultra HD Blu-rays use a container that we call Rec 2020, which is a very large gamut of colors. We don't actually use that entire range of colors just yet. They are using the same range of colors as what's used in full-on digital cinemas. They call that DCI, Digital Cinema Initiative color, and they call it P3 for whatever reason, but it's DCI P3. But that's a larger palette of colors on Ultra HD Blu-ray than what is used on regular Blu-rays, which is called Rec 709. That's the same range, the same palette of colors as we get for for broadcast HD TV. So Blu-ray, HD TV, smaller palette of colors, Ultra HD Blu-ray, bigger palette of colors. So that's one other difference. HDR is the other definitely noticeable difference. Blu-rays are 0 to 100 nits. Ultra HD Blu-rays are theoretically as much as 0 to 10,000 nits. That's how much the format could theoretically hold. Right now, most movies are being mastered at either 1,000, 2,000, or 4,000 nits. But so you have a wider range from dark to light, you have a wider range of colors, and you have more resolution, and you have a new compression codec, this H.265, that is more efficient than Blu-ray, which was H.264. So, quite a few differences between Blu-ray and Ultra HD Blu-ray. Now, if you get a 4K upscaling player, it can upscale the resolution, so, I mean, it's creating new dots that were never there in the original source, but it can do a pretty good job of that. Because you're only having to quadruple.
It's just like when you went from DVDs to Blu-rays. You took the DVD, and if it's a decent DVD, you take the DVD, you put it into a Blu-ray player, it upscales it.
Yep.
You know, it upscales
so it took
or your
what
TV
was
will do it as well.
480p and upscaled that to 1080p. Now we're taking 1080p and upscaling it to 2160p. So it can do a pretty darn good job of that. The color and the HDR stuff, like there are some televisions that will try to fake that, right? They'll take the Rec 709 color and try to kind of expand it to DCI color, or they'll take the 0 to 100 nit standard dynamic range and kind of try to expand it to 0 to 1000, but that doesn't work nearly as well because you're trying to create stuff that wasn't in the original signal. You can only ever guess at it, and when you're trying to expand colors and brightness ranges, like if something is white on the original disc, how do you create different shades of white out of that? I mean, that's next to impossible. So you can get the resolution that upscales quite easily and quite nicely and quite well. In fact, a lot of movies themselves are still being mastered at something lower than 2160p resolution. So the resolution, like we say, is probably the least visible part of all of this. The expanded color, the expanded range from dark to light, that's what you're getting with Ultra HD Blu-ray.
And it kind of really depends on the movie itself, too. You know, we were watching this weekend Aliens, which I've got a disc of. It's not like the Criterion Collection or anything like that. It's just like a disc, an Aliens disc that I think it was like the extended version of the director's cut or something like that. Has a couple extra scenes in it. And I think I bought the disc and never watched the disc. I think I maybe watched it once. Anyways, I was trying to come up with some movies I could watch with the kids that are scary-ish. Maybe, you know, the worst thing they have in there is violence and a little bit of language, because my kids are old enough that they can kind of handle that. At least the ones that were watching this movie are old enough to handle that. I wasn't looking for anything with nudity or sexual stuff or anything like that because they're not there yet. Plus, I don't want to watch this with my kids. That's just weird. So I picked Aliens. We started watching it, and some of the scenes are so bad. Like the graininess just really comes through. You know, when you're watching it on the player. So you know, it's going to be hit or miss. So how good will it look? Just as good? No. Impossible. Won't look just as good. It will look not as, or at the very least, it will look mostly as good. At the very best, I'm sorry, it will look mostly as good. It's going to look different because it's missing data. Basically, it's missing data. It has to make it up. So speaking of up conversion, was the best player for upscaling his old DVDs to look their best on his Vizio P series, besides spending $550 on an Oppo. Old DVDs to look his best
DVDs.
On a 4K set.
Yeah, not even Blu-rays, because he's like, look, I've built a big collection. I don't want to rebuy every single one of these movies. A ton of those movies aren't available to even buy, right? On Ultra HD Blu-ray. So I don't blame you one little bit. It's like, a lot of us have done that. We have these collections and want to keep watching them and have them look as good as they're able to. Fair enough.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have a clue. Rob, tell him.
So by and large, Panasonic actually has some very good. So what I'm suggesting to you here is actually a Blu-ray player, not an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, because you're talking about upscaling DVDs to 4K, and I would assume upscaling Blu-rays to 4K as well, but not necessarily playing Ultra HD Blu-rays, and he wants the price to be lower. So Panasonic has a player, the DMP-BDT360. It's $110 on Amazon. So $110. It's obviously not the cheapest Blu-ray player that's out there, but it's a far sight better than $550. That seems like a more reasonable price. What Panasonic's been doing well is, I won't get into all the technical details, but it's called chroma upsampling, which is that whole color thing that we were talking about, expanding. So it's not actually trying to expand the color, but what it's doing is taking the original color that was on your DVD, which is not even Rec 709, all right? That was SEMPTI C, which is even a smaller palette of colors than Rec 709. It does a good job of taking that small palette of colors, putting it into a file format that your 4K TV understands better, so that when your 4K TV shows you the DVD's colors, they don't look weirdly blown out. Like, it does a good job of converting the DVD color to your 4K TV's colors. So that's the reason why that particular player is often sort of lauded for its upscaling capabilities. And the price isn't too bad. Sony also has a Blu-ray player, their BDP-S6700. People laud that for having very sharp, crisp-looking upscaling, because they actually put their X Reality sort of, software on top of it to try and artificially sharpen the image. So some people really like that, but the Panasonic seems to stand out better for the color conversion. So maybe you can choose which one matters more to you. Hyper sharp looking or more accurate color looking. If you were thinking of getting an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, though, and you just didn't want to spend $550 on the Oppo, Sony has just released theirs. That's their UBP-X800. It's $300. So $300, definitely more affordable than the $550 Oppo. The Sony player will not do Dolby Vision. The Oppo will. So that's one potential difference there. But again, Sony's X Reality upsampling stuff does a pretty darn good job. It makes DVDs and Blu-rays look very sharp on a 4K set. So if you are going Ultra HD Blu-ray and want cheaper, that's a choice.
Yeah. So these players will put out 4K. So all your display will have to do is display it. See, that there's the rub right there, is getting it into something that your display can display without having to do any conversion itself. Right. And that's what you're really trying to do with these. And yes, it's they're Blu-ray players, so they're not whatever the stuff is they're supposed to be, but they do a good job with all this. So in general, do newer speakers, this is on a completely different track here.
Yeah.
Or tack. Is it different tack or different track? Oh, is it tack?
I've always heard tack. No.
It is tack. It's a boating term, right? You tack back and forth. So on a different tack, do newer speakers sound better than older speakers due to technology improvements over time? His speakers are all JBL Venue series, and while they sound good, the upgrade itis is real. Since he likes his JBLs, he's looking at the newer JBL 590s and L800s. He's afraid of being disappointed by the upgrade, in quotes. So is it fair to expect new to equal better here? Is there anything to be gained by moving to simply newer speakers if the price point is the same? And does it make sense to stick with JBL or should be looking at newer brands too? I'm going to say that price point, if I was going to judge a speaker without ever having heard it and having minimal information about it, price point would be the number one thing I would want to know. Because the price point dictates many things about what a speaker can and cannot do. More so than just about anything else. Yes, a particular speaker designer will make a huge difference on how something sounds. Their design choices, what equipment they have, what experiences they have, what kind of design choices they make. That's going to make a big difference in how it sounds. But you give a price point to that guy of a certain amount, and that's going to funnel them into a speaker that can only sound a certain amount of good, generally speaking. It's why we're always amazed when we hear certain speakers at certain price points. We say these are the go-to speakers. Why? Because they exceed their price point in their sound quality. So if I had a pair of speakers that I paid $500 for, and then the same company that I made that made my speakers 10 years later came out with newer speakers that also cost $500, I would actually expect them to sound a little bit worse than the speakers I currently own.
Because of inflation.
Because of inflation. I would expect them to sound a little bit worse. So, yeah.
Now, I definitely wouldn't say newer automatically equals better when it comes to speakers, because speakers haven't radically changed in the past couple of decades.
No,
we've
not
we've
really.
had a
Yeah.
few new design materials come out, a few new design goals sort of come out, but by and large, I mean, the range of frequencies they're producing has been the same. It's the range
Yeah.
of human hearing. There isn't a whole lot of point in going beyond that. That's what we can hear. So it's not such a new technology that we're seeing like gigantic leaps and bounds and changes when it comes to speakers.
Right,
I mean,
right,
I would
right.
point to something like the old Athena brand, which isn't even around anymore, unfortunately, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
were nice, affordable speakers. I really loved their little 5.1 speaker package that they used to sell. If I could still get that little 5.1 speaker package, I would take it over basically any affordable 5.1 speaker package that's out there right now. I would still say they're better speakers than what you could get for the same price or even multiples of that price in a compact little 5.1 speaker package these days. So it's definitely not newer automatically equals better. I have complete understanding in saying I've owned these speakers for however long. I'm feeling like maybe I'd like an upgrade. It's not that I dislike anything about my current speakers. I'm just feeling like maybe I want an upgrade or a change. I would definitely encourage you, not because I think the JBL speakers would be a disappointment to you, but there are so many options out there. Many of them that
Nowadays,
if you can't hear them in a store, you can bring them to your own home and then send them back for free. There's at least 3 that we know of in SVS, AVRant, and RSL, right? We should add RSL in there because they do the free 2-way shipping.
Yes.
So why the heck not?
Right.
Give them a try. So I would absolutely expand beyond just JBL. Maybe you'll still end up liking the JBL's best. Nothing wrong with that, but why not audition other things if it's free to do so?
I agree, and I think that especially a company as large as JBL and the Harman, JBL is part of the Harman Group, right?
They sure
So
are. Which is
the
now
Harman
part of
Group-
Samsung.
right, has seriously changed their direction and focus over the years. So I would be even less likely to think that you would be impressed with their, a direct comparison to your older speakers. I think in the past they were more focused on that sound that they were trying to get, and now maybe they're focused on other things, which are also important, at least for making money, but maybe not as worried about as the sound as they were back in the day. You should definitely listen to them. You should do that. But I would especially when you're making a lateral move, the number one thing you need to do is look at speakers that aren't the speakers you've already owned, because those are the type that you already own, because they're going to sound different. They're gonna sound different, that's what you're looking for. You want an upgrade. You want something different. You don't want the same. If you got another pair of speakers from them and it sounded exactly the same, you'd be disappointed.
Because that would seem like a little bit of a waste of money if you're like, these really don't sound any different. That's fine because I liked what I already had, but then why did I
just spend some more money on it? Yep. Yeah. And some people are like, I spent more money because I wanted new speakers and these are prettier, or these fit better, or these that, or this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They have lots of reasons, and it's perfectly fine. You're looking for an upgrade in speaker quality, or at least sound quality. Therefore, you need to look outside of, or expand your search to as large as possible. Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.